The champagne flute slipped from Tessa Jordan's fingers, and she watched in horror as $50,000 worth of vintage Krug splashed across the marble floor of the Plaza Hotel ballroom, droplets catching the light from the chandeliers like tiny, mocking diamonds. "I'll probably mess this up," she whispered to herself, grabbing a stack of linen napkins from the nearest table and dropping to her knees, frantically dabbing at the puddle. This was exactly why she shouldn't have been working this event. 3 weeks on the job at Premier Events, and she was already sabotaging what her boss had called the most important gala of the season. It's just champagne. She looked up to find a man standing over her, tall and broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and eyes the color of aged whiskey regarded her with something that looked almost like amusement. Just champagne. Tessa scrambled to her feet, still clutching the soaked napkins. "This is a $12,000 bottle that I just destroyed. My boss is going to murder me." He reached out and took the napkins from her hands, setting them on the table. "I'm the one who bumped into you. If anyone's getting murdered, it should be me. You didn't bump into me, I was clumsy." "I disagree." He extended his hand. "Cameron Irwin." She recognized the name immediately. Everyone in New York did. Cameron Irwin, the billionaire real estate developer who had transformed the city's skyline over the past decade. The man whose face appeared in Forbes and Business Insider with alarming regularity, and she had just drenched his shoes in champagne. "Oh God," she said, staring down at his now spotted Oxfords. "I'm so sorry, I'm Tessa Jordan. I'll pay for the dry cleaning or new shoes, whatever you need." "Tessa." He said her name like he was testing how it felt. "You're working this event," attempting to, clearly failing at it. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I've seen worse disasters at these things. Last year, someone set off the fire sprinklers. That's oddly comforting." She glanced around the ballroom, where hundreds of New York's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, oblivious to her personal catastrophe. "I should probably find my boss and confess before someone else tells her. Or," Cameron said, "you could let me take the blame. I'll tell her I knocked into you, which again, I'm pretty sure I did." "You don't have to do that. I know." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary, "but I'm going to anyway." Before she could protest, he was already walking toward her boss, Deanne, who stood near the stage directing the catering staff with military precision. Tessa hurried after him, her heart pounding. She watched as Cameron spoke to Deanne in low tones, saw her boss's expression shift from irritation to something resembling deference. Deanne actually laughed, touching Cameron's arm lightly. When he returned to Tessa's side, Deanne followed, her earlier frustration completely evaporated. "Tessa, darling," Deanne said, her voice warm in a way it had never been before. "Mr. Irwin explained what happened. These things occur at events. Don't worry about it. Just make sure the floor is cleaned up before the speeches begin." After Deanne walked away, Tessa stared at Cameron in disbelief. "What did you say to her? The truth? That I wasn't watching where I was going and knocked into you? That's not what happened. Memory is a funny thing." He slipped his hands into his pockets, looking entirely too pleased with himself. "Besides, I'm a major donor to this charity. She's not going to argue with me. So you used your billionaire powers for good, something like that." He paused, studying her face. "When does your shift end?" The question caught her off guard. "Around 11. Why?" "Because I'd like to take you to dinner." Tessa's laugh came out more nervous than she intended. "You can't be serious." "Why not?" "Because you're you, and I'm someone who just destroyed expensive champagne. We exist in completely different universes. Universes collide sometimes." His expression was earnest now, the amusement fading into something more genuine. "Look, I spend most of my time at events like this, talking to people who want something from me. You're the first person in months who's looked at me like I'm an actual human being, even if that look was pure panic. That's a low bar, maybe, but I'd still like to have dinner with you." She should say no. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. Men like Cameron Irwin didn't date event coordinators who could barely keep their own lives together. But there was something in his eyes that made her want to take the risk. "Okay," she heard herself say, "but you're buying, since you're the one who destroyed that champagne." His smile was genuinely warm. Deal. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Tessa moved through her duties on autopilot, hyper-aware of Cameron's presence across the ballroom. Every time she glanced his way, he seemed to be watching her, even when he was deep in conversation with other guests. At one point, a stunning blonde in a dress that probably cost more than Tessa's car tried to monopolize his attention, practically draping herself across him. He extricated himself politely but firmly, his gaze finding Tessa's across the room. At 11:15, after the last guest had departed and the cleanup crew had begun breaking down the tables, Tessa found Cameron waiting for her by the ballroom entrance. He had loosened his bow tie, and somehow he looked even more attractive, slightly rumpled. "I thought you might have changed your mind," she admitted. "Not a chance." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His palm was warm, his grip solid and sure. "I know a place nearby, unless you're too tired. I'm running on adrenaline and terror." Sleep isn't happening anytime soon. The restaurant turned out to be a small Italian place tucked down a side street, the kind of hidden gem that only locals knew about. The owner greeted Cameron by name, ushering them to a quiet corner table without any fuss. Soft candlelight flickered between them, and the scent of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. "You come here often?" Tessa asked, settling into her chair. "Whenever I can. Marco's family has owned this place for 3 generations. No pretense, no cameras, just good food." He ordered wine without looking at the menu, then turned his full attention to her. "Tell me about yourself, and not just the champagne disaster part," she laughed, feeling some of her nervousness ease. "There's not much to tell. I'm 26, originally from Boston. I moved to New York 2 years ago to pursue event planning, which my mother thinks is a waste of my marketing degree. I live in a shoebox apartment in Queens with my best friend Sophie, who's a teacher. I'm generally a disaster at most things, but I'm really good at making other people's events perfect. I doubt you're a disaster at most things. You haven't seen me try to cook, or parallel park, or apparently carry expensive champagne. Everyone has weaknesses." He paused as Marco brought their wine. "What made you want to be an event planner?" It was a question people rarely asked, usually more interested in the glamorous parts of the job than the motivation behind it. "My grandmother," Tessa said softly. "She used to throw these elaborate dinner parties when I was growing up. Nothing fancy or expensive, just gatherings that made everyone feel special and seen. She said creating moments of joy for people was one of the most important things you could do. When she passed away 3 years ago, I realized I wanted to do that professionally, make people happy, even if just for one night." Something shifted in Cameron's expression, a gentleness replacing his earlier confidence. "She sounds like she was an amazing woman." She was. Tessa took a sip of wine to ease the tightness in her throat. "Enough about me. What about you? How does someone become a billionaire real estate developer? The same way anyone becomes anything. A lot of work, some luck, and terrible timing that somehow worked out." He leaned back in his chair. "My father was a construction foreman, worked himself to death, literally. Heart attack on a job site when I was 23. I used the small inheritance to buy a condemned building in Brooklyn, fixed it up myself, sold it for a profit, did it again. And again. Eventually, I could afford to hire people. Built a company. The rest is just a series of bigger projects and better luck. That's a very modest way of describing building a billion-dollar empire. The money isn't the interesting part." He met her eyes across the table. "The interesting part is creating something that matters. Buildings where people live, work, fall in love, raise families. I'm not constructing steel and glass. I'm building the backdrop for people's lives." Tessa felt something flutter in her chest at the passion in his voice. "That's beautiful." It's also exhausting and often thankless, but I can't imagine doing anything else. Their food arrived, and they fell into easy conversation. Cameron asked about her favorite events she had planned, laughing at her story about a wedding where the groom's ex-girlfriend had shown up drunk and tried to object during the ceremony. She asked about his most challenging project, listening intently as he described transforming an old factory into affordable housing. Most developers wouldn't bother with affordable housing, she observed. Most developers didn't grow up watching their parents struggle to make rent. His jaw tightened slightly. I remember being 8 years old, listening to my mom cry in the kitchen because we were getting evicted. Again, I swore that when I had money, I'd make sure other kids didn't have to hear that sound. The vulnerability in his admission made her reach across the table, her fingers brushing his. I think your grandmother and mine would have gotten along. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. I think you're right. They stayed at the restaurant until Marco gently informed them that it was past closing time. Cameron insisted on driving Tessa home, and she didn't protest when his driver pulled up in a sleek black car. The ride to Queens felt both too long and too short. She was acutely aware of Cameron beside her, his thigh pressed against hers in the backseat, his thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of her hand. When they pulled up outside her building, a modest 3-story walk-up that had seen better decades, Cameron walked her to the door. "Thank you for tonight," Tessa said, fumbling for her keys. "I can honestly say I never expected my evening to end like this. Neither did I." He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "Can I see you again?" "I'll probably mess this up," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I'm not good at this. Dating, relationships, any of it. I overthink everything, I'm chronically late, and I have a habit of self-sabotaging when things start going well." Cameron reached up, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her breath catch. "Then we'll figure it out together. You say that now, but you don't know what you're signing up for. Maybe not, but I'd like to find out." His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. "I haven't felt this interested in someone in years, Tessa. Don't run before we even start." She looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt her defenses crumbling. "Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you." He kissed her then, soft and questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her hands fisting in his jacket as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both of them slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow night?" he asked. "Dinner again. I have to work until 8. Then I'll pick you up at 8:30. Over the next 3 weeks, Tessa fell into a pattern with Cameron that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He would show up at her office after work, often with coffee or takeout, and they would drive to various corners of the city. He took her to a jazz club in Greenwich Village, a rooftop garden in the Bronx, a tiny bookstore in Brooklyn that specialized in first editions. Each date revealed new layers to him, peeling back the billionaire facade to show the man underneath. He was thoughtful, remembering that she took her coffee with oat milk and too much sugar. He was funny, with a dry wit that caught her off guard and made her laugh until her sides ached. He was passionate about his work but never condescending when explaining the intricacies of commercial development. And he was remarkably patient with her tendency to overthink everything. "You're doing it again," he said one evening as they walked through Central Park, her hand tucked in his. "Doing what?" Spiraling in your head. "I can see it in your face," she sighed. "I'm just wondering when the other shoe is going to drop." "What other shoe?" "The one where you realize I'm not special or interesting enough to keep dating. That you could have literally anyone, and you're wasting your time with someone who still uses coupons at the grocery store." Cameron stopped walking, turning to face her. Other couples flowed around them on the path, but he didn't seem to notice. "Do you want to know what I see when I look at you?" "Probably my questionable fashion choices. I see someone who lights up when she talks about making people happy, someone who sends her best friend care packages during tough weeks, Someone who volunteers at a soup kitchen every Sunday even though she barely has time to sleep. He framed her face with his hands. I see someone genuine and kind and beautiful who has no idea how special she actually is. And yes, I could date someone who doesn't use coupons, but I'd rather date someone who knows the value of things. You're too good at this, she whispered, blinking back unexpected tears. At what? Saying exactly what I need to hear. I'm just telling you the truth. He kissed her forehead, soft and lingering, but if you need me to be less articulate about my feelings, I can try. She laughed, the tightness in her chest easing. No, please keep being articulate. It's working for me. That night, Cameron invited her back to his penthouse for the first time. Tessa had been both curious and nervous about seeing where he lived, half expecting some cold, sterile bachelor pad filled with expensive art and uncomfortable furniture. Instead, she found a space that felt surprisingly warm. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but the furniture was comfortable and lived in. Books overflowed from shelves, and framed photos of what looked like his family decorated the side tables. This isn't what I expected, she admitted, walking to the window to take in the view. What were you expecting? He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, something more intimidating, less cozy. I spend enough time in intimidating spaces. Home should feel like home. He pressed a kiss to her neck and she shivered. Can I get you something to drink? Water is fine. She watched him move to the kitchen, still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that this was her life now. Dating a billionaire who looked at her like she hung the moon. It felt like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. When he returned with 2 glasses of water, she asked the question that had been nagging at her. Why me, Cameron? Really? I'm not fishing for compliments. I genuinely don't understand what you see in me that you couldn't find in someone more suited to your world. He set the glasses down carefully, then took both her hands in his. Do you remember what you said the first night we met, about probably messing things up, my anxiety speaking yes? That's when I knew you were different. Everyone I meet tries to present this perfect version of themselves. They want to impress me or get something from me or be seen with me, but you were just honest, raw and real and unfiltered. His grip tightened slightly. I've spent the last 8 years building my company, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to be around someone who didn't want anything except to know me. You make me feel like I'm just Cameron, not Cameron Irwin, the billionaire developer. Do you have any idea how rare that is? She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss him. This kiss was different from the others, deeper and more urgent. His hands slid down to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and she tangled her fingers in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had darkened to almost black. Stay, he said, his voice rough. Please? She should probably go home, maintain some sense of boundaries and pace, but she didn't want to. She wanted to fall into him, consequences be damned. Okay, she whispered. That night marked a shift in their relationship. Waking up tangled in Cameron's sheets, sunlight streaming through the massive windows, felt both surreal and perfect. He was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with a soft expression. That's not creepy at all, she mumbled, stretching. I've been accused of worse. He traced a finger down her bare shoulder. I have to go into the office for a few hours, but I'll be back by noon. Stay here. We can spend the afternoon together. I should probably go home, change clothes. Or you could borrow one of my shirts and we could order breakfast. His hand slid down to her waist, pulling her closer. I'm not ready to let you go yet. She melted into him, knowing she was in serious trouble. Fine, but only because I'm starving. They spent the day in comfortable domesticity, ordering too much food and eating it curled up on his couch while watching old movies. Cameron made calls occasionally, but he always apologized and kept them brief. Tessa worked on her laptop, planning an upcoming corporate event, and marveled at how easy it felt to exist in his space. I could get used to this, she said without thinking, then immediately tensed. Sorry, that sounded presumptuous. Cameron set aside his phone, giving her his full attention. It didn't, and for the record, I could get used to it too. We've only been dating a few weeks. I know. He pulled her laptop away, setting it on the coffee table, then drew her into his lap. But I also know how I feel, and I know I want this to be serious if you want that too. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I want that, but I'm scared. Of what? That I'll mess it up, that I'm not enough for your world, that eventually you'll see all my flaws and realize you made a mistake. Tessa. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. I don't want perfect. I just want you. All of you, flaws included. Can you trust me enough to let me prove that? She thought about her grandmother, about taking risks and creating moments of joy. About the way Cameron looked at her like she was something precious. About how, for the first time in her life, she felt genuinely seen and valued. Yes, she said, I can try. His kiss was gentle and sweet, filled with promise. That's all I'm asking. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness Tessa hadn't known was possible. Cameron integrated seamlessly into her life, charming Sophie with his self-deprecating humor and insisting on helping with dishes after their weekly dinners. He showed up at her events, staying in the background but always ready to help if something went wrong. He met her mother, enduring her pointed questions about his intentions with remarkable grace. And slowly, Tessa began to believe that maybe she wasn't going to mess this up after all. But then the articles started appearing. Photos of her and Cameron at restaurants, walking through the park, leaving his building. Gossip columns speculating about the billionaire's new girlfriend, picking apart her background and appearance with vicious glee. One particularly cruel piece described her as aggressively ordinary, and questioned what Cameron could possibly see in someone so far beneath his usual standards. Tessa tried to ignore them, but the constant scrutiny wore on her. She became hyper-aware of her clothes, her hair, the way she carried herself in public. The anxiety she had been managing crept back in, whispering that everyone was right to question their relationship. You're pulling away, Cameron said one evening. They were having dinner at his place, but Tessa had been distracted all night. Talk to me. It's nothing. It's not nothing. You barely touched your food and you've checked your phone 6 times in the last 10 minutes. She set down her fork, her appetite gone. Have you seen the articles? The photos? I don't read that garbage. Well, I did, and they're saying things about me, about us, about how I'm not good enough for you. Cameron's jaw tightened. You know that's not true, do I? The words came out sharper than she intended. Cameron, I love what we have. But I can't escape the feeling that I'm playing dress-up in a life that doesn't actually fit me. Every time we go out, I'm terrified I'll say the wrong thing or wear the wrong outfit. I'm exhausted from trying to be someone I'm not. I have never asked you to be anyone but yourself. You don't have to ask. The world around you does it for you. She stood, pacing to the window. I got a call from my boss today. She's promoting me to senior event coordinator. It's everything I've worked for. But all I could think about was whether people would say I only got it because I'm dating you. He came up behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Is that what you think? I don't know what to think anymore. Tessa, look at me. He turned her around, his expression fierce. You are brilliant at your job. You earned that promotion through your own talent and hard work. Anyone who suggests otherwise is an idiot, and I'll personally tell them so. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't fight all my battles for me. I need to figure out how to exist in your world without losing myself. Then tell me how I can help, because walking away isn't an option I'm willing to consider. She looked up at him, at the genuine concern in his eyes, and felt her resolve weaken. I don't want to walk away. I just need some time to figure out how to do this, how to be with you without becoming someone I don't recognize. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. Take whatever time you need, but please don't shut me out. We figure it out together, remember? She nodded against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Together. The following week, Cameron surprised her by taking her to meet his mother. They drove upstate to a modest house in a small town where a woman with Cameron's eyes and warm smile greeted them at the door. You must be Tessa, Margaret Irwin said, pulling her into an unexpected hug. "I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope, mostly," Margaret winked, leading them inside. "Though Cameron did mention you spilled champagne on him, I told him he probably deserved it." Tessa laughed, some of her tension easing. The house was cozy and cluttered, filled with photos and comfortable furniture. Nothing like the sterile wealth she had been imagining. Over lunch, Margaret shared stories about Cameron as a child, much to his embarrassment and Tessa's delight. She learned about the scrappy kid who had worked 3 jobs to help support his family, who had put himself through college while caring for his mother after his father's death. "He acts tough," Margaret said, squeezing her son's hand, "but he has the softest heart of anyone I know. When he loves someone, he loves with everything he has." Cameron cleared his throat, color rising in his cheeks. "Mom." "What? It's true." She turned to Tessa. "I know dating someone like Cameron comes with challenges, the money, the attention, the expectations. But I raised him to know that none of that matters without someone genuine to share it with, and from what he's told me, you're about as genuine as they come." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Later, as they drove back to the city, Tessa felt something settle in her chest. "Your mom is wonderful. She likes you, I could tell." "How?" She didn't pull out the baby photos. "That's her seal of approval." He glanced over at her. "Feeling any better about things?" "Actually, yes. Seeing where you came from, meeting your mom, it reminds me that you're just a person. A really successful person with too much money but still just a person." He laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "It is, because I can handle dating a person. It's the billionaire part that intimidates me." "So date the person and ignore the billionaire part." "It's not that simple." "It can be." He reached over, taking her hand. "Tessa, I don't care about any of that. I care about you, about building a life with someone who makes me want to be better. Who makes me laugh and calls me out when I'm being an idiot, who looks at me like I'm just Cameron, not a walking bank account." "When you put it that way, it sounds easy." "Maybe it is, and we're overthinking it." She squeezed his hand. "I love you. I should have said it before, but I was scared." "But I do. I love you." Cameron pulled the car over to the side of the road, ignoring the honking from behind them. He cupped her face in his hands, his expression intense. "Say it again." "I love you, Cameron Irwin." "I love you too, so much it terrifies me." He kissed her, deep and possessive. "Move in with me." "What? Move in with me? Stop paying rent on that shoebox in Queens. Bring Sophie if you want. I have enough space. Just say yes." "That's crazy. We've only been dating 6 months. 6 months, 6 years, what's the difference? I know what I want, and it's you. Every day, every night. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep holding you. I want to build something real and lasting. So move in with me, please." She should say no. It was too fast, too much, too everything. But looking at him, at the vulnerability and hope in his eyes, she couldn't bring herself to refuse. "Okay," she said. "But if this blows up in our faces, I'm blaming you." He grinned, kissing her again. "Deal?" Moving in with Cameron was both easier and harder than Tessa expected. The logistics were simple. Cameron hired movers who packed up her entire apartment in a day, and Sophie moved into a place with her girlfriend. But adjusting to life in the penthouse, to sharing space with someone constantly, challenged Tessa in unexpected ways. She had to learn to accept help from Cameron's housekeeper, Maria, who insisted on doing the cleaning and laundry. She had to navigate the reality of Cameron's demanding schedule, the late-night calls and early morning meetings. She had to get comfortable with the security that now accompanied their lives, the cameras and guards that felt invasive but necessary. But she also discovered the joy of domesticity with someone she loved, making breakfast together on lazy Sunday mornings, falling asleep tangled together every night, coming home after a long day to find Cameron already there, waiting for her with dinner and a glass of wine. The small, ordinary moments that made a life. 8 months after moving in, Cameron took her back to the Plaza Hotel, to the same ballroom where they had met. "Why are we here?" Tessa asked, confused. The space was empty, stripped of its usual grandeur. because this is where it started. He led her to the exact spot where she had dropped the champagne. This is where I met the woman who changed my entire life, and I wanted to come back here for this. He dropped to one knee, and Tessa's heart stopped. Tessa Jordan, from the moment you spilled champagne on my shoes, I knew you were special. You've challenged me, frustrated me, made me laugh, and shown me what it means to love someone completely. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be by my side forever. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a simple solitaire that caught the light perfectly, but Tessa barely saw it. All she could see was Cameron looking up at her with his heart in his eyes. I'm going to mess this up, she said, laughing through tears. I'm going to be a terrible billionaire's wife. I'll say the wrong things at parties and forget important people's names. Then we'll figure it out together. He stood, still holding the ring. That's all we've ever done, so what do you say? She threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with everything she had. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding took place 6 months later in a small ceremony at Margaret's house upstate. Just family and close friends, nothing like the society wedding everyone expected. Tessa wore a simple dress she found at a boutique in Brooklyn, and Cameron cried when he saw her walking toward him through his mother's garden. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. You're not so bad yourself. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to figure things out together no matter what came. When the officiant pronounced them married, Cameron kissed her like it was the first time, tender and full of promise. At the reception, dancing under string lights in the backyard, Cameron held her close and murmured in her ear, "No regrets. Only that it took me so long to say yes to that first dinner. Worth the wait, though, definitely worth it." 2 years later, Tessa stood in the nursery of their penthouse, holding their daughter Lily in her arms. The baby was barely a week old, tiny and perfect, with Cameron's dark hair and Tessa's nose. Cameron came up behind them, wrapping his arms around both of them. "How are my girls?" "Tired." "Happy, overwhelmed." She leaned back against him. "I still can't believe she's ours. Believe it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're doing amazing, by the way. I've changed 3 diapers wrong today. I'm pretty sure I'm failing at this." "You're not failing, you're learning, we both are." He came around to face her, smoothing a hand over Lily's downy head. "And we're figuring it out together." Tessa looked at her husband, at their daughter, at the life they had built from a chance meeting and spilled champagne. She thought about all the times she had been convinced she would mess everything up, and how Cameron had been there every time, steady and sure, reminding her they were in it together. "I love you," she said softly. "Both of you, so much." Cameron kissed her, gentle and sweet. "We love you too." "Always?" Lily stirred in her arms, making the small, mewling sounds that meant she was hungry. Tessa settled into the rocking chair, Cameron kneeling beside her, and as she fed their daughter, she felt a profound sense of peace. This was her life now. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and full and hers. She had been so afraid of messing things up, of not being enough. But with Cameron beside her, she had learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other every day. It was about figuring things out together, one spilled champagne bottle and one beautiful moment at a time. Outside the window, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing someone living their own story. But this story, their story, was the one that mattered. And it was just beginning.